Hey, this is Ben from MetricFire, and we're going to go over how to send metrics to a hosted Graphite account, which is the first step before you can create dashboards or alerts. So in this video, we'll discuss the three main ways of sending metrics, which are through your code, using one of our agents, and using a third-party service that we integrate with. Okay, so before we send any metrics, I want to quickly establish a few things like what Graphite does and the difference between a metric and a data point. So one of the main purposes of Graphite is to timestamp data it receives, which is what makes it possible to plot on a graph. Time series data helps you identify patterns, trends, and anomalies in whatever you're monitoring. For example, a metric could be recording application events like the number of sign-ins to your website over the course of a day. When plotted on a Grafana dashboard, the x-axis will show the timestamps of when the data was collected, and the y-axis will show the data's numeric value at that point in time. Some of the more common types of time series metrics will measure things like server performance or cloud infrastructure data, maybe database performance or network performance. There's plenty more, but those are typical types of statistics that we commonly see for infrastructure monitoring. All right, now that we've gone over what time series data is, it's also important to differentiate between metrics and data points. So a metric is a unique namespace that you can send data to or query data from, whereas a data point is the numeric value that is sent to the metric namespace. So the point in the graph represents the numeric value, and the namespace underneath it is the metric. It's also important to understand the Graphite format because this is how our Carbon endpoint is able to accept data. So metrics need to be sent to us in the format of name and numeric value. And generally, you can just let Graphite add the timestamp for you. And the dot notation format of a Graphite metric provides a tree-like structure, which makes them easy to organize and query. All right, so now we're going to send some custom test metrics, and we have a few different protocol options available: TCP, UDP, HTTP, and StatsD. So I'm going to be showing some basic examples of how to send a test metric for each protocol. TCP allows you to securely send your metrics because you receive a confirmation that your packets were received. And to send a TCP metric, you can use the Netcat utility with our Carbon endpoint at port 2003. And you'll always prefix the metric with your HostedGraphite API key, which will authenticate the request. UDP allows you to send metrics faster, but without the added security measure that TCP offers. It's a similar command to TCP, but you'll actually add the -u W0 option in the command. U just labels it as a UDP request, and W0 basically disables the timeout, since this is known as the fire and forget protocol. HTTP functions slightly differently. With HTTP, we send metrics to our API using a curl command, where the data binary option includes the metric name and numeric value. So you'll still include your API key in the command and just send it from your terminal to hit our HTTP endpoint. And after about 30 seconds or so, these metrics will have moved through our layers of ingestion, and you can query them in Grafana like this. All right, lastly, we'll send some StatsD metrics, and StatsD isn't really an official protocol, but it is a popular way of sending metrics to us. It has its own endpoint and port, which point to our hosted StatsD servers. And the StatsD request is similar to UDP, except the endpoint is statsd.hostedgraphite.com at port 8125. So there's three different ways to collect data: counters, gauges, and timers, and they can be defined by appending pipe C for counters, which is used to track number of occurrences, pipe G for gauges, which are used to measure current or your most recent values, and then pipe MS for milliseconds. These are also known as timers and can measure things like request times. All right, let's talk about how to send custom application metrics, which is a good way to gather more specific data around your app's performance. We provide code snippets for all the popular programming languages, and you can configure these throughout your codebase to send us metrics using a socket connection. So these types of metrics are useful for tracking events in your app, like logins, requests, response status codes, And here I'm just running the Python code snippet to send a custom test metric into my account, which you can see here in the metric search. Okay, let's talk about agents. Lots of DevOps teams like agents because they're easy to use and compatible with most operating systems. We like Telegraf because it has configurable input plugins that allow you to collect data from lots of popular technologies. So now I'm just going to send some basic system metrics to a HostedGraphite account by deploying Telegraf into one of our Linux servers. Just follow our installation docs to download Telegraf and unzip it. And after the package is unzipped, you'll need to open the telegraf.conf file, and you'll make a few modifications. First, you'll locate and comment out the influxdb output line. Then you can search for graphite and comment in the graphite output. Then below that, you'll edit the servers line to include our Carbon endpoint, and then uncomment and edit the prefix line to include your HostedGraphite API key. You can also download a pre-configured Telegraf file from within the HG app. And now all I have to do is save and restart Telegraf for it to start sending metrics to your account, and each metric will be prefixed with Telegraf. You can also grab our Telegraf auto dashboard, which gives you some pretty good server observability straight out of the box. Okay, so the other way to get metrics into HostedGraphite is by configuring one of our integrations. We integrate with lots of popular technologies like Heroku, CircleCI, New Relic, Azure. One of our most popular integrations is AWS. We can pull metrics from most AWS services using the CloudWatch API, and you can build out custom dashboards with those metrics. So you can just go to that section in the UI and paste in your access key and secret key. Then you can just select which of your services you want to pull metrics from. We also have a default IAM policy you can paste into your AWS user profile to grant all of the necessary permissions. So once AWS is enabled, some auto dashboards are created in your account. These make for a good starting point, but can be customized further. So to recap, using our integrations to send data from other technology platforms allows you to visualize more components of your infrastructure under a single pane of glass. And we'll actually cover more integration configurations in a separate video. All right, so for pricing, we charge based on the total number of unique time series metrics that are stored in your account, and not the amount of data points sent to each metric. So we also don't separate pricing based on the source of metrics, because that can get complicated pretty quickly. We like to offer transparent pricing that's easy to understand, and it lets you know exactly what you're paying for. So we encourage anyone watching this video to send some metrics to an account by signing up for a 14-day free trial. You can find this at MetricFire.com or through the link in the description. And if you need more information on how we can help you or your business, just reach out to us directly at sales@MetricFire.com. Or you can also use our in-app support channel. All right, thanks so much for watching, and happy monitoring.